Have you ever noticed how silence speaks louder than words, especially in love? There's something magnetic, almost mysterious, about the energy of absence. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on how your silence doesn't just confuse a man, it unlocks something deep inside him. Here's the truth. A woman's presence can comfort him, but her absence, that's what haunts him. When you suddenly stop texting, when you don't chase, don't explain, don't react, that's when the real emotional storm begins, in his mind. Because the moment you pull back, it forces him to feel everything he's been ignoring, his own attachment, his fears, his pride, his ego, and most of all, the possibility of losing you. And no, this isn't a game, it's psychology. Men are wired to respond to space. When something valuable disappears, their brain categorizes it as urgent. Suddenly, the woman he took for granted becomes the woman he can't stop thinking about. In this video, I'll reveal exactly what gets triggered when you go quiet, how it flips his emotional script, and why your absence might just be the most powerful move you've ever made. So buckle up, because by the end of this video, you won't be afraid to pull away, you'll know exactly how and why to do it. Let's get into the emotional truth no one talks about, starting right now. Men are often taught to maintain control of their feelings, their relationships, and especially their sense of self-worth. That sense of control is deeply tied to something most people overlook in dating, the male ego. And when you suddenly go quiet, pull back, or stop showing up the way he expects, something shifts. Not on the surface, but inside him, where his confidence quietly resides. Here's what most women don't realize. Your attention feeds his ego, whether he admits it or not. Every text you send, every effort you make, every time you're there to support him, listen to him, or show up for him, it validates him. It reinforces that he's wanted, important, in control of the dynamic. But when that suddenly stops, he's left with a very uncomfortable question echoing in his mind. Wait, did she just take her energy away from me? And this isn't just about missing your presence. It's about what your absence says without saying anything. It challenges the version of himself he's built around your availability. Without even trying, you've disrupted the foundation he's been standing on. The belief that you'll always be there. That assumption was part of his identity, and now your silence has thrown it into question. This is what we call ego disturbance, when a man's internal balance is shaken because someone he assumed was secure is suddenly not there. And the reaction, it can range from quiet confusion to full-blown panic. He may not even realize why he's feeling thrown off, but he'll feel it. Some men react by reaching out more, almost compulsively, needing to restore the emotional order. Others may try to act indifferent, pretend they're unbothered, but that too is a mask for the internal pressure building up. His mind starts replaying past conversations, wondering if he missed a sign, questioning whether you're slipping away or already gone. This is how you live rent-free in his head, not by chasing him, but by pulling away at just the right moment. And no, you're not manipulating him. You're allowing natural consequences to take place. You're stepping out of the space he once took for granted. And that absence becomes a mirror. It shows him the gap between how much he thought he had control and how much he actually doesn't. That's the beauty of ego disturbance. It doesn't require anger, drama, or confrontation. It only needs your absence, deliberate, calm, and powerful. When you stop overgiving and simply remove your energy, you create tension. Not chaos, but tension that forces him to reevaluate your worth, your role in his life, and ultimately himself. And that's when the emotional shift truly begins. Because once his ego is disturbed, he has two choices: grow and show up differently, or lose the very thing that once fed his confidence. Let's move to the next emotional trigger that gets activated the moment your energy disappears. When a woman pulls back, something ancient wakes up in a man. Something that has nothing to do with logic, and everything to do with instinct. You may think you're just giving him space, detaching to focus on yourself, or refusing to beg for attention. But to him, it registers as a shift, a withdrawal, a movement away. And biologically, emotionally, men are wired to notice when something starts slipping from their grasp. This is where the chase instinct kicks in. For centuries, men have been conditioned, not just socially, but biologically, to pursue. It's hard-coded in their psychology. They're natural hunters, driven by a desire to conquer, earn, and possess what feels valuable. But here's the twist. Once something feels secured or too available, that instinct dulls. Comfort replaces curiosity. Complacency sets in. Now think about how many women unknowingly kill that instinct by always being the one to reach out, over-explain, chase closure, or fix the connection. Every time you initiate, overgive, or overstay, you're removing the mystery. You're giving him certainty, and certainty does not ignite desire. But when you stop, when you become unavailable, when you stop responding with urgency, when you focus on your own world and let the silence linger, he starts to feel the pull. Not because you asked him to come closer, but because the game has changed. You've repositioned yourself, and suddenly the version of you he once thought was always just there has become a little more distant and a lot more intriguing. Now he's not just thinking about you, he's strategizing, wondering if you're seeing someone else, wondering if you're truly done, wondering how and when he lost your full access. That wondering, that's the chase instinct working. It's not about desperation, it's about reactivation. Your distance doesn't scare him, it challenges him, and that challenge turns passive attraction into active pursuit. But here's where it gets even more interesting. A man doesn't chase what he doesn't value. So when he does begin to lean in, reach out, or try to reconnect, it's not just a reflex. It's because your silence elevated your value in his mind. You're no longer just a familiar presence. You're a mystery again, something he has to earn, something that now requires effort. And you didn't say a word. You didn't beg. You didn't explain. You disengaged, gracefully, calmly, without bitterness. And that move, as simple as it sounds, flips his internal script completely. So while you may feel like you're doing nothing, make no mistake, your absence is creating motion, inside him, around him, and eventually toward you. Because the moment a high-value woman pulls away, she invites a man to step up, or be left behind. Let's talk about what happens next, when that distance triggers something even deeper. The fear of being replaced. There's a specific moment, subtle, almost invisible, when a man realizes that your absence might not be temporary. It's when he starts imagining what life looks like with you gone, and someone else in your place. That image alone, even if completely imagined, sparks a deep and unsettling emotion within him, the fear of being replaced. This isn't just about jealousy or insecurity. It's about value, loss, and the most uncomfortable question a man can face. What if she's giving what she used to give me to someone else? Men rarely think this way when you're present, available, and consistent. When you're always showing up, answering texts, checking in, or doing the emotional labor in the relationship, he feels safe, but also somewhat entitled. He assumes you're not going anywhere. That assumption breeds complacency. But when you stop doing those things, when your energy shifts, your tone changes, or worse, your presence disappears, his mind starts filling in the blanks, and it doesn't fill them in with peace. Instead, he begins imagining other men around you. Someone else making you laugh. Someone else hearing the thoughts he once thought were only his to hear. Someone else getting close to the woman who once prioritized him. And just like that, the emotional ground he was standing on starts to shake. That's the fear of replacement, and it's a powerful emotional trigger, especially for men who never realized how deeply they relied on your attention to feel secure. This fear isn't always expressed through words. It may look like sudden interest, unexpected messages, or random questions like, "Are you seeing anyone?" He might try to act cool, but his curiosity will spike. He'll scroll through your social media more often. He might even test you, throw out casual remarks to see how you respond. Why? Because he wants reassurance that he hasn't been replaced, that he still holds a place in your world. But here's the irony. The more you lean back, the more valuable he believes you must be to someone else. Your distance makes him reflect not just on losing you, but on who could take your place. And that idea, it hurts more than he'll ever admit. It stirs his competitive instincts, sure, but more than that, it touches his emotional ego. It confronts him with the possibility that he may have mishandled something extraordinary, and now someone else might benefit from what he couldn't appreciate. That thought haunts him, not because you threatened it, but because you left just enough space for him to imagine it. When your absence makes him feel replaceable, he has to decide, stay in denial, or step up before he loses you for good. And the deeper he falls into that fear, the more desperate he becomes to reclaim the version of you he never thought he'd have to fight for. Let's move to what happens when your distance forces him to face someone he often avoids himself. When you step back, when your presence fades and your voice grows quiet, something powerful begins to unfold, not in you but in him. You may think he's just enjoying the space or not noticing, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Because the moment your energy is gone, he's left with only one thing: himself. And that's where the real discomfort begins. You see, when you are consistently around, emotionally present, checking in, making an effort, you unintentionally acted as a mirror. A mirror he didn't want to look into. Your presence helped distract him from his own emotional gaps. He didn't have to ask himself hard questions like, am I showing up for her? Or am I emotionally mature enough to meet her halfway? Your energy filled in the blanks, carried the connection, and kept things feeling okay, even when he wasn't doing much. But once that energy disappears, so does the comfort. Suddenly the silence forces a kind of reflection he can't avoid. Without your constant input, he's confronted by the lack of his own. He starts to notice the imbalance, not because you pointed it out, but because he can now feel the void where your presence used to be. This isn't just uncomfortable for him, it's unfamiliar. Men are rarely taught to sit with emotional stillness, to reflect, process, or be self-aware in relationships. When your silence enters the space, it removes all distractions and exposes everything he's avoided feeling: regret, guilt, emotional immaturity, maybe even insecurity. It all rises to the surface. He may not even be conscious of what's happening, but he'll feel it. This is where odd behavior often kicks in. He might lash out, withdraw further, or suddenly try to pull you back in with attention he wasn't giving before. Why? Because that mirror you left behind, it's showing him things he's not ready to see. And rather than fix it, his instinct might be to try and shatter it by getting you back into the old dynamic where he doesn't have to reflect at all. But here's the truth. You didn't need to explain, beg, or break down your needs. You simply removed the mirror. You walked away from being the emotional caretaker in the relationship. And in doing so, you handed him his first real chance to meet himself. Not the version he shows the world, but the one that's been quietly avoiding responsibility, intimacy, and growth. That reflection, it lingers, even when you're not talking, even if you never come back. Because once a man is faced with what he could have been, what he didn't give, and what he might never get again, it changes him. And that internal shift either wakes him up or confirms exactly why you had to step away. Now let's explore the final and most confronting trigger, the emotional withdrawal that silently shifts the power dynamic entirely. There comes a moment in every emotional connection when one person quietly takes back their energy, not with dramatic goodbyes, not with ultimatums, just a quiet, almost invisible shift, where the effort, the emotion, the availability all begin to fade. And if he's paying any attention at all, he'll feel it, not in your words, but in your energy. That's emotional withdrawal. And whether he realizes it or not, it instantly flips the power dynamic. Until now, he may have felt in control. Maybe he assumed your emotions were wrapped around him. Maybe he thought you'd always be there, no matter how little effort he gave. But emotional withdrawal interrupts that illusion. It creates an imbalance, not by force, but by absence. And that kind of silence, it doesn't just shake him. It reminds him that you were always the emotional center of the connection. Most women don't realize how much power they hold until they stop giving. Until the warmth they used to offer so freely is suddenly replaced by neutrality, by stillness, by an almost eerie calm. And to a man who once relied on your emotional reactions, your withdrawal becomes a wake-up call. Why? Because emotional detachment signals one dangerous thing to him. You're no longer emotionally invested. When a woman detaches, not out of anger, but out of clarity, it's a shift he can't ignore. And here's the truth. Most people won't say out loud. In relationships, the one who needs less has more power. Emotional withdrawal signals that you're no longer holding on to hope, or fantasy, or potential. You're grounded, unavailable. And when he senses that, the control he thought he had starts to crumble. This isn't about manipulation, it's about boundaries. When you stop trying to fix, chase, or decode his behavior, when you no longer respond with frustration or emotional highs and lows, when you stop feeding his ego and instead fall silent, you force him to sit in the discomfort of your indifference. And indifference to someone used to being prioritized is devastating. He may try to provoke a reaction, any reaction. He might test you, bait you, even try to guilt you, but deep down he knows your emotional presence is gone. And with it, the dynamic that kept him comfortable has disappeared too. He no longer knows where he stands. He no longer feels in control. And now, he's left wondering if he's lost access to something he didn't even realize he needed. Your emotional investment. Emotional withdrawal doesn't always scream. It whispers. And that whisper carries more power than any argument ever could. Because once a man feels your absence in his nervous system, he realizes too late that you had the power all along. You just finally stopped using it to protect his comfort. Now, let's talk about when and how to re-engage without giving that power away. There's a moment when he starts reaching out again. Maybe it's subtle, a random text, a story reply, a late night just checking in. Or maybe it's more obvious, direct questions, sudden compliments, a noticeable shift in effort. And here's the truth. When he starts pulling toward you after you've emotionally withdrawn, you hold all the power. The question is, what do you do with it? Reconnecting doesn't mean going back to who you were. It doesn't mean slipping into old patterns, answering every message instantly, or filling in all the emotional gaps again. That version of you, the overextending, over-available woman, no longer exists. If you reconnect too fast, without intention, you risk undoing everything your absence created. That space, that silence, that shift in energy, it worked because it was real. So if you choose to re-engage, it must be from a place of power, clarity, and control. You reconnect when you are emotionally neutral, not emotionally needy. When you no longer feel desperate for answers, validation, or closure. When your identity is no longer tied to how he responds. That's the only time reconnection can serve you instead of drain you. Because if you're still trying to get him back, you're still giving away your center. He has to feel that the terms are different now. That access to you is earned, not assumed. Your responses are slower. Your energy is selective. You're not cold, but you're not bending either. You speak with calm confidence, not urgency. This is how he learns that if he wants a place in your life, it won't be on the terms he's used to. It will be on your terms, because you're no longer seeking connection for emotional security. You're choosing it based on alignment. And that choice, that's where your power is. When you no longer need the connection to feel whole, you become the woman he respects and desires. Because your love is no longer freely available to someone who hasn't earned it. You don't need to play hard to get. You just need to be hard to forget. And that happens when your energy is grounded, your boundaries are strong, and your presence is intentional. He must feel that reconnecting with you means rising to meet your emotional standard, not pulling you back into old, unbalanced dynamics. So when should you reconnect? When it no longer feels like a risk to your self-worth. When you're not trying to prove anything. When silence no longer feels heavy, just natural. That's when you'll know you've reclaimed your emotional power. Reconnecting isn't about letting him back in. It's about choosing whether or not he's ready for the new version of you. The version who no longer gives everything away for free. Let's wrap with one final insight you'll want to remember long after this video ends. So now you've seen it. The 5 emotional triggers that get activated the moment you pull back, not to punish him, but to reclaim your space. You've learned that silence isn't weakness and distance isn't disconnection. It's strategy. It's emotional self-respect. And most importantly, it's how a high-value woman communicates her worth without ever having to explain it. If there's one thing you take away from this entire video, let it be this: your energy is currency. Every time you pour it into someone who hasn't earned it, you're making an emotional investment with no return. And the truth is, most men don't realize how valuable your presence is until you stop handing it out like it costs nothing. Until your silence becomes louder than your affection. Until your absence begins to feel more powerful than your presence ever did. The hardest part of walking away or leaning back isn't the fear of losing him. It's the fear that he won't notice. But here's the twist: he always notices. It just takes time for it to reach his nervous system. It takes time for him to feel the difference between having access to you and losing it. And by the time he realizes what he had, your energy is no longer seeking his recognition. It's protecting your peace. Now here's your bonus tip. Something most people never talk about: emotional impact isn't made in moments of connection. It's made in moments of absence. It's not when you send the perfect text, or say the right thing, or show how much you care. It's when you say nothing. When you choose silence over reaction. When you let the space do the talking for you. Because a woman who can pull back without bitterness, a woman who can detach without drama, a woman who can walk away without looking over her shoulder, that woman becomes unforgettable. Not because she played a game, but because she owned her value. And here's the beautiful part. The power you gain from emotional withdrawal doesn't just affect him. It transforms you. You become clearer, calmer, more magnetic. You stop needing validation and start expecting alignment. You stop asking, how do I get him back? And start asking, does he even deserve to come back? That's the real shift. And once you feel that shift, you can never go back to who you were before. And honestly, you won't want to. So whether he steps up or fades away, remember the one thing a man can't unfeel is the moment he lost emotional access to a woman who finally realized her worth. If this video gave you clarity, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear which emotional trigger resonated with you most. And if you're ready for more real, no fluff insight into high value energy, hit that subscribe button. Because this is just the beginning.